Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 31 Media podcast. My name is Vaishnavi.nashte. I'm the marketing and PR manager here at 31 Media. Today's podcast is in collaboration with the Digital Transformation Awards and the AI Summit and Awards that are coming up in 2025. These are two separate B2B events that have been organized by 31 Media. So if you're interested in exhibiting, attending, or speaking at the conference, please follow the link in the description to do so. Joining us today is Rob Mason, who has 20 years of operational management and software development experience. He's held several key roles, including founder, CTO, and executive vice president, in which he's learned the best practices of building brands on the base of excellent engineering and quality. He's also written an exceptional article on our DevOps online platform. So please feel free to give that a read as well. The link will be in the description. So, without any further ado, welcome to the podcast, Rob. How are you today?
Thank you. Great. Great talking to you. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, amazing. Like, before we actually get into the key questions, could you tell our audience a bit more about yourself and how you got into software testing?
Sure. Yeah, that's a long story, and you were being gracious with saying it was only 20 years. It's been many more years than that. But so I am a CTO at Applause. We're a software testing company. We've been around for about 15 years. Our customers know us as Applause, and they're some of the biggest brands in the world, like Google and Meta and Apple and Microsoft and companies like that. And our testers know us as UTest. So in the testing community, they know us that way. So we use testers as contractors. Essentially, we have a 1.5 million people in our community, and we use those to do testing for our customers. So we know a lot about test. We do all things in test. I won't go into all the details just in the background, but we know a lot in that area and we do a lot of it. It's our bread and butter. It's what we do as a living. So we're very passionate about that area. For myself, I started off loving computers engineering. I started off in hardware engineering, moved into software engineering, and have been doing that for a very long time. Took on leadership roles and inherited QA. I was originally just a developer, software developer, moved into a development manager, and eventually ended up with QA. My first company had a philosophy that you start in engineering, and even if you're going to be a developer, whether it's hardware or software, by doing QA, which was a fantastic, I believe, starting point. And I think all engineers should really start that way, start by knowing test, because you
Yeah.
can't do good development unless you know test. So I've always had that passion from my first job. And then eventually owning QA teams, QA structures, automation QA, and
Mhm.
Applause is really sort of the accumulation of many decades of experience where now I get to help many companies improve their quality and ultimately their products, which is what we're really passionate about. So that's kind of been the progression of my career. I've got patents in software development, but I've also got patents around QA
Wow.
as well. So lots of innovation,
Mhm.
and just lots of great experience and learning together in this industry.
Beautiful. That was really well encapsulated. Thank you for that. And also, you've been in the testing space for like multiple years now, isn't it? And what changes have you seen like in the testing space over the last few years?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, we as an industry, we've been very focused on functional testing for decades. Just the basic, write a test case, execute it, does it pass? Some people even focus on adding more test cases over time. That's one of my pet peeves is people write a set of test cases and they don't grow them. But more recently, we've seen expansion into what full testing of a product means, and that means covering all the requirements, not just the basic ones. So, the basics, as I said, is like test case execution, reporting,
Mhm.
exploratory testing. That's all kind of functional testing. But what about things like accessibility? That's been a really hot topic in recent years. Lots of legislation and lots of inclusivity that companies want to reach a broader audience, include
Yeah.
more people, make their products more accessible. There's been a lot of focus on the user experience. This market, as you know, is very competitive. The switching costs for many consumers are very low, and so focus on that user experience because one bad checkout experience, one bad sign up experience, they might move on to your competitor. And so
Mhm.
bringing those into your testing process is important. We've all been trying to shift left testing. There's some resistance as we try to shift left in testing and get closer to development,
Yeah.
and closer to even the requirements, and the early stages have QA be considered early. But we're still focused on that and trying to move there. And then, of course, Gen AI has reared its head and is impacting everything. And it's not just
Yeah.
a band-aid onto a product or a new area, but we're going back and touching products in areas that haven't been touched in maybe decades and adding Gen AI to them. So those are areas where maybe the test cases have been stagnant for years, or no one's really
Mm,
done much testing because it's been solid code for a long time. And now we're reopening that can of worms. And so we need to
yeah,
do more testing. And then your whole strategy around Gen AI and AI testing in general has to be completely different.
absolutely.
So it's an exciting time because we're sort of opening up that QA box and covering
Right.
much more of a product and product experience, including
Yeah.
more users. But it's also scary because most companies are woefully understaffed in these areas, and
Hmm.
they're not well prepared. They don't have good plans around some of these areas, and that's where um, I'm excited to be able to help them approach some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite an exciting period, isn't it, to see where this entire phase will go to. And which brings me to my next question, on the report itself. I believe that you found that companies lack formal processes and documentation for testing. Would you be able to elaborate a bit more on this?
Yes, definitely. So a lot of times QA gets involved far too late in the process.
Mm,
It's almost like development, they hear the requirements, they get, epics and stories, they get to review them. When they're almost done, or sometimes after they're done, they throw it over the wall to QA, and QA is like, what is this? What am I supposed to do here? QA really should be involved from the early requirements definitions, from the planning of the project, and maybe they're not super involved during heavy development phases, although there's an argument that they should be, but they're involved far too late, and so that and then it's a scramble to catch up on what is the testing plan, how are we going to do testing, what resources do we need, what equipment do we need? How do we cover this? And it's done too late. Also, as you know, the developers, and again, I'm coming from a development background, so I'm guilty of this myself. They're late often. And when they're late, the company doesn't always shift the release date. They just tell QA to go faster or cut corners, and that often results in bad product. So to me, so time pressure is a challenge. If you have a strategy up front, if you have incorporated that into your overall process,
hmm.
you can understand what development slips mean in terms of QA, but you can also have an overall testing plan and help the business understand what really needs to be done to ensure you have a quality product going out the door. It's not enough these days to, Guy Kawasaki way back in the day said, "Don't worry, be crappy." For the enterprises, that's not good. You have to come out and have a product that works first time on
Yeah.
real devices for real people. So you need to test, overall testing strategy, testing plan, formal processes, metrics. If you don't measure it, you can't improve it. So you need metrics around all of this.
Yeah.
You need also to have QA empowerment. QA needs to be able to say, we're not shipping, it's not ready. And far too often, QA is rolled over by product or engineering managers. And this has been one of my things for decades at this point. When I have QA and development reporting to me, I tell QA at any point in time, you get to decide whether we're releasing this product or not. I'm not going to override you. I've never done that. There's been times I've been very tempted, but because I understand the impact of the business. But if it's not ready, there is no point in rushing it out the door. And that, again, everyone needs to sign on for a QA plan. It should be reviewed by not just QA, but the developers that are writing the code, by the product managers that are working on the requirements, by the business side in terms of timing and resources. And
Hmm.
all that formal setup for testing and testing plan, that's a design phase that is missed. The
Yeah.
review of that's review phases. Peer review is almost like the pull request on the development side. Those are missed. Like all of that has to be done for QA, and very often it's shortchanged. So, and then, the end result is QA's under pressure. Bad product goes out because they get steamrolled, and that's a problem. So, what we saw is like, about 15% of companies are testing really early on or bringing in at the planning or at the planning stage. Requirements
Mhm.
definition, only about 12% are bringing QA in. So QA is just not in the picture early on, and that is leading to very bad things down the line. So, when we talk about moving QA left in the SDLC, we're often talking technically, getting hands
Yeah.
on the code early on, involved in unit tests or technically, but there's also like the non-technical piece, which is the strategy and getting involved way earlier in that process with
Hmm.
documentation of the test strategy, being part of that design. The design should include how are we going to test it? And often people do not ask that question, which is terrible.
Yeah, I love how you've elaborated more on the processes and how you can involve QA teams early on itself, especially because there is no room for errors in it. And from on the report itself, what would you say are the major key takeaways from the report?
Uh, so preparation is a huge one. That is definitely companies are not planning for test. Uh,
Right.
they're also they're they're not incorporating all the different areas of test. Again, like the different aspects of a product, accessibility, usability, payments testing continues to be a problem. Automation is always, an afterthought. Those are some of the major things that we've been focused on. And it's just, again, the lack of metrics around QA are a big one. Um, it, there's a large number of areas I'll say that are missing in
Yeah.
in full QA. So, I've got a lot of ideas of things to improve and things I talk to customers about of areas that they're missing, but it's there's just a pretty broad grouping of that.
Yeah, makes sense. And if there was like one advice that you would give to companies that are currently looking to improve their testing programs or their testing processes, what would that be?
Uh, so am I limited to one, or can I give you a few?
Oh, go ahead. You can
Okay,
give
all right,
more than
all
one.
right. Great, thank you. Usability is super important. That user experience, QA often is just making sure does it work. If I click
Mm,
the button, does it work? And they don't say, well, it took me 10 clicks to get to the end. That
mhm.
usability is super important for a good digital experience. QA is, quality assurance. Usually we're checking that the code does what it says it did, but that mindset needs to change. It needs to be, is the user experience what it is intended to be? Look at that bigger experience. So include usability, accessibility. There's a lot of people out there with disabilities. We need to not exclude them from our products. We need to include them in it and make sure our products appeal to them. And still 60% of accessibility issues come from poor development, screen readers, lack of testing. So that's super important to include. For most of us are making global apps. It's, I had a startup once that we created, and our second customer was international. We were only trying to launch nationally, but because the world is so global these days, almost all of your products are going to be global from day one.
Yeah.
Make sure you have proper localization. That's testing as well. Making sure that you've got native speakers reviewing or good review around that localization. Otherwise, it feels computer generated, quirky. It puts people off, especially when the language doesn't match up, or you have very serious language mistakes which can get ugly. Payments, again, a lot of products we deal with for our customers are shopping carts, payments, buying things, and doing investments
Yeah.
and things like that. Make sure that payment experience works. That is super off-putting if you're trying to buy something or invest in something and it doesn't work. Now money's involved, and that now your switching costs are even lower because I don't trust you if my payment experience is bad. And so that's another one where the 39% of the, or sorry, 30% of our folks said that sign up process, the checkout process, the payment process was flawed. And that's the core part of your application. So I'd say, continually expand your test coverage, add more test cases, measure it. So you know how many, like, do I have 1,000 test cases now? Next quarter, next release, whatever, how many do I now have? If I haven't added any, that's not good because my product is growing. I'm always improving my product. So keep growing that. Go outside of just structured testing, include those other areas we talked about. Um, consider your QA approach around Gen AI. Your customers are all touching their products for Gen AI. All of us are driven, like our PE owners at Vista are driving all of their companies to do Gen AI. All the public companies are driving, through the board meetings and everything to drive Gen AI into products. This is going to churn a lot of the products. QA needs to be ready for that. Learn how to test Gen AI, learn about red teaming, learn about prompt injection, negative prompts, bias, all those things. That this is a whole new world for QA, and QA cannot ignore it. It's not a development only thing. It's not simple. But it is exciting and interesting, and learn about it is my advice for the QA teams. Definitely get outside of the labs, real devices, real people, real world. Get out there and make sure your product works in the real world. Too often we see customers testing in lab only environments, perfect networks, perfect devices, fully updated. Our world, the way we run things, real devices, real people around the world, we get all sorts of interesting feedback that customers do not find in their lives, their labs. And
Yeah.
last one, because I know I'm running along. Quality or the lack thereof is why customers are leaving.
Right.
That experience, that feeling that you've got a great product. It's not the next feature or widget in your application or missing it. Invest in quality, and you'll have a much better experience as a company launching your products with customer feedback and loyal customers.
Beautiful. That was a really good answer, Rob. Thank you
Thank you.
for making this podcast so value packed because we've covered like a various range of topics today. And obviously, all thanks to you, the answers have been amazing. And I really can't wait for the audience to even read your article on our website. So, again, thank you for the article as well. And thank you for
Yeah.
your time today.
Thank you. Super passionate about it. I'm really happy to be a part of your podcast.
No worries. Yeah, it was really great. So, thank you again.
Thank you. It's great talking to you.